Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents The Corner Bookstore, hosted by Red.Olaughlin. Step into a world where every story inspires. These pages come to life through the voices of authors from around the globe. Written by our global community of TV show hosts and best-selling authors, these works span genres, generations, and geographies, united by the power of storytelling. Discover your next favorite book and meet the minds behind the work. Thursdays, only on USA Global TV and Radio.
Howdy y'all, red.Olaughlin here. We're on the Corner Bookstore today on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And I was just watching all of the books pass by, and those are books from the hosts of the various shows here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Many of them are authors, and it's just interesting the variety and the number of books that are out there. When I'm not writing, I'm a researcher. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem, treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. So that's what I write about. That's what I speak about. I specialize in longevity and age-related disease. So when I'm not doing that, I'm also speaking, helping other authors get their book written. In fact, I just published a book a couple days ago for a guy in Dubai. Never met him. We connected about 3 weeks ago. He had the book, boom, it's done. So I publish books for people. And when I'm not doing that, Thursdays, I have 3 shows here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and I just love it. And today, I'm going to love talking to Alison Mcbain. She is our guest today. Alison, please join us.
Hi, how are you doing?
Exceptionally well, as always. How about you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, you're a Canadian resident right now. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah. Been living here for the past 3 years.
Okay. And you have kind of a remarkable background. I don't think I've seen as many awards given to an author as I've seen to you. I was looking at your website and just, whoa, my goodness. Pretty impressive. So why don't we just start out, since we're on the topic of writing and authoring books. Tell us a little bit about your early writing experience. I think you were, 4 years of age and you wrote a horror book or something?
A horror story, although I considered it a book at the time. Yeah, from as long back as I can remember, I loved books, and I thought, wow, this is like the best profession ever. I would love to be an author. I'd love to tell stories all the time. And of course, when I was young, I did tell a lot of stories, probably not the ones that my parents wanted to hear all the time, but yeah, I love to write and let my imagination take flight. And then, life took me sort of sideways for a number of years, but I did return to writing and started writing books and short stories and poems and getting them published. And I haven't looked back.
And you've written over 200 short stories and poems and genres out the gazoo. I mean, it's not like you're a fantasy writer or a romance or something. It's all different genres. How did that happen?
Well, one thing I've always liked to do is read all genres, and it seems sort of limiting to just say, okay, I'm just going to be a fantasy author from now on. All the other stories go away. So what I really wanted to do is sort of break that boundary. Like you have to stick in one genre. And I know most marketing experts will say, no, you have to stick in one genre because your readers will follow you from, book to book. But I always thought, what, there are so many good stories out there. It doesn't matter where they're set, if they're set in the future, if they're set with dragons, if they're set in a very literary landscape, those stories need to be told. So I have jumped from genre to genre all my life.
Okay, so in order to jump from one genre to the other, you have to do a lot of reading in order to get some background information. So, what do you prefer to read?
I like everything. So a lot of times when I'm in the process of writing, I won't read in the genre that I'm writing. So if I'm writing a fantasy book, I'm not going to be picking up Lord of the Rings, for example. But for me, a lot of where my stories come from are from real life. So I read a lot of nonfiction articles, news, scholarly articles, and that can spark, who knows what idea. And that's where I get a lot of my the kernel of my ideas for my books.
Okay, one of the things I read about you doing research was to do something creative every day. I think is one of your mantras, maybe mottos, maybe um, creative. So you're getting the news, the story, the whatever information may be out there, and you're kind of wandering around in the brain. Ah, okay, I can write on this, and it goes crazy, and you start writing. So as you're writing in sci-fi or romance or whatever, those stories are these 1,000 words, 30,000 words, 100,000 words. Where do you kind of draw the line at? Okay, I've done enough.
A lot of times I will have a specific uh, length in mind. So a lot of times I'm writing to deadlines or contests or for a publisher or ghostwriting. So I need a specific, background for a particular story based on what someone hires me for. So I do have usually a word count in mind when I start out, whether an idea will be a short story or a novel. One exciting thing that I did recently, though, with my project last year was I had a number of short stories where people said, "This is such a complex world. Can you make this into a novel? Or when is the book coming out?" And so I was able to actually expand on some of those ideas and actually give them, the full range that they really deserved. So you never know if a short story will become longer.
Okay, you accomplished something that very few people ever do in their lifetime, and that is to write many books. Yeah, a lot of people want to write a book, it never gets done. If they write a book, it's one book, and that's as far as it goes. In 2024, you wrote 34 books. Uh, this is part of your book a week program that you had going back there. So, how did that thought get started? How did you actually start writing, and then how fast did these books come out? So, let's talk a little bit about that project.
Yeah, definitely. So the idea started because of AI, actually. It sounds sort of funny. I was using no AI at all while I was writing, but I was in a conversation with a friend who was saying, we were talking about, oh, yes, this was during the writer's strike in Hollywood, and how AI was part of the contract negotiations and how it's hooks into everything. And a lot of writers are worried about that. A lot of writers are worried, well, will I still have a job after AI is done? So part of my background as a ghostwriter means that I have to write very, very fast for clients. So sometimes I would have to turn around a book in a couple of weeks. And my friend was like, well, why don't you do this for yourself? Why don't you combine your superpowers and see if you can maintain this and get some attention with a project like this? And I was like, that's a great idea. So my author versus AI was born from that, where I was going to write a book a week in all the genres I could think of for a full year. And I actually have to say, I failed. I didn't write for a full year. I only got 34 weeks in before I was derailed around Christmas time because I do have kids, I do have a family, so it got to be too much around that time. But I looked back at the year and I had 34 books, which was awesome. So I failed in a good way, I would say.
So writing a book, you have to have a thought, you have to have the outline in mind, and you start writing and you have a certain end date. You kind of know where things are going, but you also got to get the book edited. You got to get the book covers. You got to get marketing planned for it. A typical, let's say book number 5, book number 10. Now you've written a couple of them in this very short period of time, less than a month, maybe 2 weeks. What how do you edit books, get covers for books, market books when you're still writing new books and the clock is ticking?
Well, each of these books were written within a week. So yep, definitely a very short amount of time. And they weren't published at the same time. So basically, if last year was the year of writing, this year is the year of editing and sending my books
Ah,
out there. So I didn't do it all at once. So yeah, I had originally thought I was, again, superwoman. I could do it all at once, but no, I can't do it. That's way too much to take on all in one year. But yeah, so this year I have been editing, expanding some of the books that were short, and sending them out to various publishers, contests. And I've been getting some good feedback. I made the long list in one contest, and I have several books out currently. So we'll see what people think, and hopefully they'll be hitting the bookshelves within the next year or two.
okay, so you wrote the books. Now you're taking a breath and completing the editing, completing
Yes.
all other aspects of getting that book published and marketed properly so that those dollars start ringing in the door down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we all all want. Uh, okay, so you have 34 books. How many of those 34 from last year are actually published?
None of them right now.
Okay.
So again, yeah, I'm doing all the editing. I'm doing it properly. So the point of last year was just to write and make sure that I told a good story. But as you probably know yourself as an author, the first draft is never the final draft. So you got to put in the work. You got to put in the time to make sure that your story is as polished as possible and is good for readers.
Okay, so you had the project, you did all the writing, which was the purpose, was to write. And
Yes.
then now time has passed. You go back, and it's not like I just wrote this last week. I wrote this last year, and I can now have a little bit of time between what I wrote and what my brain remembered and what I actually wanted it to say versus, did I really say that? Uh,
Yeah, exactly. It's great advice I especially give to new writers is, yeah, once you finish your first draft, put it aside. Let it sit, let it percolate in your brain. Because you think that everything that was in your head does come out on the page. It doesn't. It definitely doesn't, as you probably know, Red. So you have to go back, you have to see it with fresh eyes when you do your first pass editing.
One of the things that I read that I thought was just absolutely super interesting was that you had a novel, or you want to write a novel about China establishing a community in the United States well before the Europeans did. Is that right?
Yep, that was my last book published called The New Empire. It's actually the behind me on the screen here. And I was very gratified. A lot of people liked it, which was awesome. But it was a lot of historical research, which I love. I love delving into history. But yeah, so what would the world look like if the Chinese Empire established permanent trading ties to North America, centuries before Europeans got here? And that was my big what if. And then, fast forward 300 years into their future and 300 years into our past in the 1700s and see how the world could have been reshaped.
Interesting, because I read a book many years ago called 1421, the year the Chinese discovered America. And it
Mm.
talked about a period of time, about 3 years, where an emperor actually sent out major uh, parties of boats where they went all the way around Africa, they went around Australia, they went around South America, and there's actually, I guess, places in along the western coast of North and South America where there's genetic material from the Chinese that had landed there. Was that part of any of your research?
Not that book in particular, but probably drawing from the same original articles written that probably sparked the idea. So I originally got the idea from an article that was talking about archaeological evidence that the Chinese in the 1400s had come over to South America. They didn't stay, which was where history divulged from where my book starts. But yeah, history definitely could have taken a turn.
Yeah, I found it very fascinating because when they finally got back after 3 years, because they actually sailed north of Russia too, all the way over almost into Finland, in that area. And I guess at that time the weather in the world was such that it wasn't jam packed with ice. Uh, so they actually were able to transit that. But the part that I found interesting was that a new emperor came in. They said, "Nope, we don't want to tell anybody," and they burned everything. They destroyed the boats, and they had some really, really large. I mean, I'm talking about super, as large as some of the boats we're seeing today. I was just, I spent 31 years in the Navy, and aviator most of the time, so I'm fascinated by a lot of places and a lot of things. But you start looking at some of the stuff that they had, and uh, I'm just, wow, why would you destroy all that? But apparently, not all of it was destroyed, and that's kind of how that book came about. But I was driving home one day from work, and there was an author in there talking about alternative history. Never heard the term before. And he says, what if the British had occupied Central and South America instead of the Spanish? What would the world be like today? And what if the
That's
Spanish had settled in Canada rather than anyway? And he just says, "What if?" And I said, well, that's pretty interesting. And he says, well, what if uh, the raids on the libraries back in Egypt and stuff back around 300, 400, didn't happen? And could you have put a man on the moon by the year 1000 because you wouldn't have had the Dark Ages? What would the world be like today? And that what if, just listening to that show driving home, that was before I was really into writing. But and then I read a couple of them, and I wasn't as enthused about the author's interpretation. But you're giving me another what if moment in my life that I've read a little bit about, but now I need to go and find out. And maybe your book is where I really need to go next. So thank you so very much for that thought, because I will take some action on that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah. What ifs are wonderful and they're so much fun. Um, Especially because there are so many turning points in history where something small happens and it changes the whole course of history. And so finding those key turning points are part of the fun of doing the research, of delving into history books and finding your next big story idea. So I continually do that. A project like this, though, does take me a lot more time than, for example, writing the book in the week. And you'll see from the books that I wrote last year, none of them are alternate histories in the same way as my most recent book. But I am saving up my energy. I do have another big what if idea that I'm planning on pursuing maybe next year, and it will be just as detailed as my last book. But yeah, it will take tons and tons and tons of research to do. So I'll probably have to take maybe, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months just to do the research and make sure everything is in place. Because the one thing that anyone who loves history or history buffs, they will definitely take a look at your detail. Sorry, they'll catch you if you make one mistake.
Well, we're almost up right now at the 20-minute mark, which I like to use as a marker for commercial break. So when we come back from that, we may or may not talk about the Romulans and the Klingons in your next book as they're visiting the United States in the year 2030. But we'll wander into whatever world you want to talk about then. So let's go to commercial break, and I'll see you in about a minute and a half.
Get ready to wear the brand that's changing the world of media. Introducing the official USA Global TV and Radio online store. From our TV show hosts to our incredible global guests, you asked, we delivered. Rep your appearance with pride. Whether you've been on air, hosted a show, or tuned in, we have something just for you. Visit us at usaglobaltvradioshoп.myspreadshop.com and start shopping today. Check back frequently. We're dropping fresh new designs all the time. Showcase your role in our global community. These designs celebrate your voice, your story, your presence. It's more than just merchandise. It's a movement of hope, inspiration, education, and elevated listening. Head to usaglobaltvradioshoп.myspreadshop.com. Your spotlight awaits. USA Global TV and Radio. Elevate your style. Elevate the world.
Red O'Laughlin here on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And today's guest is Alison Mcbain. And Alison, please join me again. Okay,
Thanks.
I didn't mean to throw you a loop with the Klingons and the Romulans, but that's just what popped in my mind when what if, and I needed something to introduce the commercial with, so that was my what if. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, awesome. I am definitely a fan. I love I love Star Trek. Yeah.
But do you know what role what's her name, Lucille Ball played in the original Star Trek?
No, is this the one the first Star Trek?
TV series, yeah.
No, I didn't. I didn't know she had any role.
Yeah, she's the one who, after everybody said no, that was what they want. She was the one with Desilu Productions says, yes, this is what we want. So she gave the okay, and that's what actually got the show paid for and on TV, because everybody else in the Hollywood area didn't want to touch it.
That's so awesome, man. I like her even more now. What a legend.
Yeah, so that's one of those little trivia things that a lot of people are not aware of, but it's a Desilu production when you look at the original setup.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm gonna store that away for trivia night.
Okay, so when you're writing and you editing, you have an editing. You're also the assistant editor or the editor of a company that does editing. So do you do all your own editing, or do you farm it out? When do you do the farm out? Let's talk about editing for a few minutes.
Yeah, definitely. So I am a freelance editor. I own my own company. I am the associate editor for a magazine that is published by my press. And I let someone else take the reins of the magazine, actually. So I'm sort of in the background, helping run things. But yeah, I do edit, self-edit a lot of my work, and I do work with editors at various publishing houses that publish my work. And I do have my whole group of editors who do help me with my own work also. So it's a bit of both, I would say. So I love to have other people take a look, especially on scenes that I'm unsure of. But a lot of times, yeah, I will be self-editing my work and then, trusting my own judgment after years in the business and sending it out.
Why don't we take a brief moment or two and take a look at your website, AlisonMcbain.com, and why don't you lead us through there, what's on there and what's of interest to people?
Yeah, definitely. So well, that's my Author versus AI website. So that's about my project from last year, writing all the books. So one thing that is on that website, The Author versus AI, is actually excerpts from all the book. I read excerpts as soon as I was done. It's not the full book published on there, but yeah, if people are interested about what's to come and what will be published hopefully shortly in my name, you can take a look at my Author versus AI website. My main website, it talks about my books and all the short stories and poetry that have been published or are coming out shortly. Another thing that I do is I actually do book cover design, which I don't really talk about that much, but it's a lot of fun. It's part of my whole motto that you're talking about: do something creative every day. So sometimes, when you don't feel like writing, maybe you will design a book cover. I've done it for clients and for some of my own books too. So it's a lot of fun to sort of exercise creativity in various forms. I've also done a webcomic. I drew a webcomic for a while about all the joys and tribulations of parenting.
One of the things I really liked about your Author versus AI website was the fact that on there was a section that says writing tips that I went through there and said, wow, amazing. I mean, just that has more information than almost every one that I've ever looked at in one location, from the genre of the writing to the editing to just everything that needs to be known about the publishing. Lots and lots and lots of information. So for our audience today, the Author versus AI, Author versus VERSUS AI.com. In that particular one, there's a tab called Writing Tips. Lots and lots and lots of information on there. So if you're a seasoned writer, there's a lot of good information there. If you're a brand new writer, you'll be amazed. So, but I'm glad that you captured a lot of that information, because it's vital information, because we do it, but we don't necessarily share it with everyone.
That's true. And one thing that I also do is I like to mentor new writers. So there are a couple writers that I've sort of taken under my wing. And yeah, I love to share writing tips. I do conferences, workshops, where I give presentations, and I'm always happy to share what I learned along the way, because especially when you're starting out, there's a lot of information, and the only way to get it is from people who have come before. I'm happy to share all the things that I learned along the way, including the mistakes. The mistakes are key, because you gotta fall down a couple times and pick yourself back up, and keep on going.
Tell us about your perspective on AI and writing.
AI is like any other tool out there. It can be used well or it can be abused. So, uh, for some authors that I know, they use it as part of their marketing, which it actually is very helpful. So, one author I know actually uses it. He'll plug his whole book into AI, and it will spit out a summary, and he will have to edit the summary afterwards, but he finds it a lot easier to help him come up with sort of key points of his book rather than doing it himself, because most authors hate writing summaries, because you're trying to boil down a 100,000 word novel into 2 paragraphs, 1 paragraph. So he finds it very helpful with that. Another author I know uses it for her marketing. So like when she's trying to do sort of the blurbs for her book to put on book ads, she has it help out with that. So definitely it can be a very useful tool for writing sort of the bits and bobs of marketing for your book. When it comes to actually writing your book, though, it definitely is not something that I would recommend. It falls flat in a number of ways, and it will have its own voice, which is not your voice. So one thing that I advocate for is do your own writing. If you want to use AI, use it to help with the parts that you don't like the marketing.
I've had a couple clients that I've used AI to generate cover designs, where they said
Yes.
1850 Central Texas, umpty umpty ump. This is what I want: windmill, I want fence, I want what. And so I put that into AI, come up with 3 or 4 or 5 different designs. I send it back to the client and I say, which ones you like? I like 2 and 4. Okay. So I take those number 2 and 4, and then I send that to the designer and said, here is the summary of the book. Here's what my author wants. here's what he's already approved as far as a basic concept. Create something for me. And so I use the AI as part of the, not just the verbiage, the text of what I need for cover, but actually a visual that then I supplement with additional text saying, okay, I need to have a little bit more here, or change this, and I found that to be very effective using AI. So
Yeah, it's definitely a useful tool. It can help. Like there are programs, for example, Grammarly, which incorporates AI, which authors use. It's a free program that can help check. You need to put a comma here. This word is misspelled. So it can be a useful tool to help with again, the outside parts of writing a book, the marketing, the getting it to publication, the um, all of the other stuff that we might not like as authors. We just want to sit in a cave and write our books, and then someone else puts them together for us.
okay, you mentioned that you do your covers. Have you always done all your covers?
No, but I do like I love art. So I love putting things together and having my own concept. It's one reason why I'm both self-published and traditionally published, because I like the control of being in charge of publishing my own work. But I also love traditional publishing because then you have a whole team with you. So it's sort of, if I have a small project that I'm like, maybe this is something that I can handle on my own, I will definitely take the reins and design my own cover and put it out there, and then move on to my next project. So yeah, it's fun to design. It's fun to actually help authors, because they do this for clients too, help authors get exactly what they want to see on the cover of their book.
What about audiobooks? What about your books in foreign languages?
I haven't crossed that yet, but it is on my to-do list. So audiobooks are much more complex and take a lot of time. So eventually.
Okay. The transition from, let's say, Spanish or Chinese or Portuguese or Japanese, I want to put this book in a different language. Just going to AI, yeah, it sort of gets me there, but it may be a third grade education level. It may have not necessarily the same flow that was intended. So you really need to have that humanistic approach. As you said, just putting something in Grammarly doesn't give you the full you. You get a very flat response. So I've been doing some exploring on, converting my books, and there's some realistic, and by realistic I mean cost effective options that's maybe a project that I'm going to undertake next year. I have not done the audio myself, but again, as you say, it's a little more complex, and I would love to do the voice myself, but I'm not sure. So is that a voice thing that you'd be doing with each of your genres, or would you hire that out?
I think for some it would be me, but for some of them, like I write from all backgrounds, and some of my main characters are men. So I think I would probably hire a male voice actor if my protagonist is a man. I think that would feel more authentic in some ways. But yeah, if there's a female, like I also write romance, so I think I could be a pretty good reader of the romance. So I think that, and it would be fun to do. Romance is light and bubbly, and well, the kind I write is generally. So I think that would be fun to read.
I've listened to a number of different audiobooks over time, and there are some of the orators, for lack of a better word, the speakers, that they can give me 5 different French accents. They can give me
Oh,
the male and the female. They can give me a very wide range, and I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, how do they do that? And I guess it's just one of those talents, that skill sets that you have.
they might also be parents, because I don't know about you, but I remember when my kids were little, I would do tons of different voices. But then, of course, my only audience was my kids, so I didn't feel silly doing it. But I might feel a little bit more uncomfortable if I try to do it in front of an audience other
Well,
than my kids.
my daughter uses her sergeant's voice periodically when she needs
Oh,
to get
nice.
full attention. which she practiced a lot on her kids. But then when she worked in the prison system in Texas, and it was a very large area and for somebody 4'10", she has a very, very, very large, very strong voice. In fact, you'd never believe it came from that person when where did that come from? But you're right. We as parents can adapt that whatever we need to do that. But we're getting toward the end of the show, and I want to give you a few minutes. You ghostwrite, you edit, you do a number of different things. So take a minute or two and tell the audience, how can they get in touch with you? Who's an ideal client? What services you offer? How they buy your books? And we'll go ahead and get ready to conclude the show today.
Yeah, definitely. All my information is on my website, which is AlisonMcbain.com. That's Alison with one L. So if you want to reach out to me via email or social media, it's all in one place. It's very easy to get a hold of. I do freelance editing. I do ghostwriting, mainly in the fiction genres. And I do editing in most genres. The one I would say I don't do is self-help books, but nonfiction, fiction, fantasy, science fiction, literary. I'm perfectly happy to tackle that. Yeah, and I'm just very grateful to have been on the show again. Thanks so much, Red. It was awesome.
And you're part of Mickey's Creative Edge in his publicist business there in Canada, right?
Definitely. Mickey is the best.
And even though you have 400,000 words of how to write and edit and publish and everything else, that you could almost pull those out and use those as chapters. To me, that's a perfect how-to right there, as being able to create a half a dozen books the next time you get ready to write a book a week.
Yeah, definitely. And I have more tips to come. So definitely check out my website. They're on their way.
Alison, thank you so very, very much for your time today. I look forward to our next conversation. Alison Mcbain, for those people on our audio audience, is Alison, ALISON, McBain, McBain.com. So AlisonMcbain.com. Thank you, Alison, and we'll catch you later. I'm Red O'Laughlin. We're getting ready to conclude today's show of the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. My next show following immediately in about 20 minutes is called The Wise Ones. And we usually talk to an entrepreneur. Many times it's an author who is also running their author business as a business. And so we welcome a lot of authors on there. But generally speaking, we've had all sorts of different kinds of business people on that show, and love to have you as a guest. If that's something that you'd like to do, just get in touch with the USA Global TV and Radio Network. There's a place in there to sign up to book your show, and give me a call. We'll be more than happy to talk about getting on there. I have a third show I do every week called Talking Heads. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. So as I'm looking at this, I'm really focused on longevity and age-related disease. And so how does this chemical affect that one, and this organ produces that, and this does that? Can I speed it up? Can I slow it down? So today I'm talking about increasing the risk of disease. Just getting older, just the mere fact one day to the next, I'm increasing my risk of getting some kind of disease because certain things are happening in the body. But what can we do about that? There really are a lot of things that are out there, but as we talk about on a lot of different shows, particularly on these kinds of shows, it's awareness. If you weren't aware of ghostwriting or editing or publishing, we provide a lot of information on that. On my Talking Head shows, my primary focus is awareness and education, so that you have good information. Go to your doctor and say, hey, doc, what about this? And so that's one of the things I'll be talking about today, is there something that you and your doctor, you and your pharmacist might be able to clarify for you to make things better, to take action to improve your health down the road? And that's really and truly what I'm looking for. So please join me next year on The Wise Ones. And then at an hour after that, Talking Heads is the show. So Red O'Laughlin signing out on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Bye, y'all.
Lady Ella flies up high, spreading kindness through the sky. With Lord Jack right by her side, through the world they glide. They listen close, they understand, helping
In a world that moves fast, there's strength in the woman who moves with grace. Introducing Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Each piece is intentionally designed for the woman who knows her worth, crafted from luxurious Italian eco-fabrics that feel as good as they look. With elegant coverage, effortless support, and timeless style, our swimwear celebrates both your body and your essence. Founded by fashion expert Carrie Sykes, Bay London is made for women who want to feel sexy, stylish, and seen. From poolside to beachside, sunrise to sunset, Bay London outfits you for every moment that matters. Because beauty isn't about age, it's how you wear your confidence. Bay London, confidence, elegance, effortless luxury. Visit baylondon.com. Act now for your exclusive friends and family discount of $35. Scan the QR code. Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Proud sponsor of USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.